we begin, as is customary, with verses of homage and aspiration. Homage to the root teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all the benevolent lineage masters. The supreme Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered, even in millions of kalpas. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, please generate the supreme bodhicitta. Now let's study the Dzogchen Longchen Yingtik Preliminary Guide, the words of my perfect teacher. In this section we have the homage verses to the lineage masters. We've already covered the homages to the three great lineage masters, to Venerable Longchenpa and to Venerable Jigme Lingpa. Today we begin with a new verse, the homage that the author, Patrul Rinpoche, composed for his sole root guru, Gyalwai Nyugu. Here is that verse. Avalokiteshvara manifesting in the form of a guru, teaching Dharma and creating connections to lead beings onto the path of liberation. One who performs boundless activities adapting to beings' capacities. To the supremely kind root guru, I pay homage. Patrul Rinpoche's unique and extraordinary master was indeed Gyalwai Nyugu. Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu, according to history and some great masters' prophecies, it's said that he is Avalokiteshvara, manifesting in the human realm to guide sentient beings in the form of a spiritual teacher. Therefore, people commonly refer to him as an emanation of Avalokiteshvara. He is mentioned in many treasure teachings or the Terma teachings and in various sutras and tantras as well. Any sentient being who, either directly or indirectly, establishes a virtuous connection with Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu, they'll all attain liberation and be reborn in a pure land, just like our teacher, Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. Some great accomplished masters are truly extraordinary. In this very life, whether you see their image, hear their Vajra speech, or visualize them in Guru Yoga practice, you can receive their blessings. Through the unique power of that spiritual connection, all such people can be reborn in pure lands and attain liberation. At the same time, Gyalwai Nyugu appeared in many different forms, adapting to the varying capacities, inclinations, and dispositions of the beings he was guiding. His activities of guiding sentient beings were vast beyond measure. It can be said that Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu's lineage disciples are spread throughout the world. His teachings are widely disseminated throughout all directions. His activities are indescribable in words and writings. In front of Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu, the remarkable root guru, possessing the three kindnesses, that's to say, the kindness of bestowing empowerments, transmissions, and pith instructions, the author, Patrul Rinpoche, pays homage to him with body, speech, and mind. Now turning to Gyalwai Nyugu's own story. At the age of 19, Gyalwai Nyugu relied on the Venerable Master Jigme Lingpa as his guru. Before Jigme Lingpa, he received empowerments and all the key instructions on Dzogchen. Later, he traveled to Dzakhamalung, a remote area in Sershul, near where Tubga Rinpoche had established a retreat center. He remained in retreat there for 21 years, until he realized the very essence and nature of awareness, fully awakening to Dzogchen, the great perfection. He attained complete enlightenment. Throughout history, he is recognized as a great accomplished master, an enlightened one. Therefore, his direct disciples are as numerous as the stars. Among them, 2 disciples stood out above all others. In Tibetan tradition, they're compared to the sun and moon. The sun-like disciple was Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, who was in fact recognized by Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu as the reincarnation of his guru, Jigme Lingpa. The moon-like disciple was Patrul Rinpoche. Patrul Rinpoche relied on Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu as his teacher. Gyalwai Nyugu transmitted the full depth of his realization to Patrul Rinpoche. It was as if their minds became one. Therefore, Patrul Rinpoche's sole root guru is Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu. In Tibet, Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu isn't as well known as Patrul Rinpoche. However, indeed many of his later disciples, upon hearing his name or receiving his teachings, naturally gained extraordinary blessings in their continuum and attained realization, enlightenment, or the Vidyadhara level. Such instances in the history of Tibetan Buddhism are countless, extremely numerous. In his later years, Venerable Gyalwai Nyugu built a monastery in Sershul called Jaga Monastery. Later, as he approached parinirvana, Gyalwai Nyugu offered Patrul Rinpoche a relic. His fingernail, which in Tibetan Buddhist tradition is considered a sacred object carrying the master's blessings, and instructed Patrul Rinpoche to sculpt a statue in his master's likeness at that place. It's said that the statue still exists and people have been venerating it ever since. The lineage disciples of Gyalwai Nyugu have spread throughout the entire Tibetan region, whether in the Lhasa area, in Amdo and Qinghai, or in Kham and Sichuan. They're spread far and wide. Among such lineage disciples, those who attained realization, who truly renounced all concerns of this life and went into secluded retreat and attained accomplishment, such practitioners are quite numerous. So, all of you Dharma friends gathered here, it's truly important to supplicate the lineage masters sincerely and reverently. This is of great importance. If you aren't very familiar with some other supplications, here, the homage verses mentioned above are truly excellent. Generally speaking, many great masters in Tibetan Buddhism often use these verses by Patrul Rinpoche to pay homage to the lineage masters at the beginning of their teachings. Many people also incorporate these verses in their daily recitations to pay homage to the lineage masters. Now, before composing this treatise, Patrul Rinpoche actually had many, many teachers. Among them, he paid special homage to these few particularly important masters. Therefore, those who have some understanding of Tibetan history and Buddhist teachings should understand that the treatises these few great masters left behind for later generations, and the accomplished disciples who carried forward and benefited from their teachings, their contributions to the flourishing of Dharma and benefiting humanity are extremely significant. There are certainly people today who know something about history, but I sometimes feel that in schools nowadays there's a particular way of learning history. For example, they learn about when someone was born, and later when they passed away, how many treatises they composed, and so on. This is just the academic approach of introducing a person. I have seen some people use this approach to introduce the biographies of accomplished masters. They focus on age, era, the political context at the time, and what the person actually accomplished. But from a Buddhist perspective, there's a dimension that academic biography usually doesn't touch: the inner realization, the invisible blessings, and the spiritual transmission. These intangible aspects are rarely studied by modern researchers. So, as Buddhists, we should of course know about the basic history and know roughly when the person was born. This should be learned and understood, but for us, the most crucial thing is to seek inner realization. This is very important for everyone, especially for those practicing the Dharma. Next, let's discuss an overview of the entire treatise, the content of the Dzogchen Preliminary Guide, The Words of My Perfect Teacher, has been briefly introduced here. The complete teachings and the omniscient Longchenpa's lineage treatises. The essential pith instructions for attaining Buddhahood in one lifetime. The common and uncommon preliminaries of the true path, both outer and inner. The branch teachings on the swift path of transference. What exactly does this Dzogchen guide teach? In fact, this guide already presents Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings and the quintessence of the 84,000 methods in a complete and comprehensive manner. This quintessence, from the perspective of combining theory and practice, is what the omniscient Longchenpa, a great master in Tibetan Buddhism, discusses in Finding Rest in the Nature of Mind and its Great Chariot Commentary, and the omniscient Jigme Lingpa discusses in The Treasury of Precious Qualities. These two treatises are quite comprehensive. So that's why over here it says, the teachings passed down from these two omniscient masters' treatises. Venerable Longchenpa's Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind. Many of our Dharma friends have studied it, and Patrul Rinpoche highly praises it. In the past, we specifically taught in the Golden Key to the Profound Path, it also says, the essence of all the Tathagata's teachings, free from error, well spoken like never before. It means the essence of all the Tathagata's teachings of all the different schools is flawlessly and completely embodied in this treatise. Such excellent teachings as these in the entire history of humanity is unprecedented. He also said, All 9 vehicles of the Dharma are contained within this. All the 9 vehicle teachings are all gathered in finding rest in the nature of the mind. Therefore, I would occasionally browse through the Chinese translation of finding rest in the nature of the mind, which brings me great joy. But I sometimes wonder whether people in later times, living as we do in an age when so many distractions compete for our attention, will truly appreciate these teachings. I say this because, from a Buddhist perspective, there's a difference between teachings that arise from direct realization and those that arise from conceptual analysis alone. Generally speaking, these treatises are exceptionally profound and carry genuine blessings, but they aren't necessarily read by many. Moreover, in this age, what Buddhist tradition calls a degenerate age, meaning a time when authentic spiritual teachings are harder to encounter. Many people treat ordinary worldly texts as the most precious books, while these profound Dharma texts receive less attention. The treatises passed down from the omniscient Venerable Longchenpa and Jigme Lingpa and are actually the most profound. These treatises are all summarized here in the form of pith instructions. In other words, the quintessential pith instructions are all collected together. That's the Dzogchen Preliminary Guide, the words of my perfect teacher. It's the quintessence of all the Buddha's teachings and the summary epitomizing all Dharma. By relying on this text, one can actually attain complete Buddhahood within this very lifetime, meaning it provides an extraordinarily skillful and direct path. This is an extraordinarily profound teaching, so we shouldn't think that this is just a preliminary practice. Preliminary practices might not be that profound, etc. There's no need to think that way. Indeed, this practice can be considered both a main practice and a preliminary practice. Therefore, all the complete teachings are contained here. The entire treatise can be summarized into 3 parts. The entire treatise can be divided into 3 parts: the common preliminaries, the uncommon preliminaries, and the path of transference. The first part is the common preliminaries, also called the outer practices. These cover 6 topics: the precious human life, the impermanence of life, karma and its effects, the faults of samsara, relying on a spiritual teacher, and the merits of liberation. That's 6 topics in total. The second part is the uncommon preliminaries, also called the inner practices. These begin with refuge, which is considered the very root of all the Buddha's teachings. The inner preliminaries continue with arousing bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings, the Vajrasattva practice to purify obscurations, mandala offerings to accumulate merit and wisdom, and Guru Yoga to receive blessings. Finally, there's the swift path of transference. This is the branch teaching on the unsurpassable Vajrayana, perfected through 3 methods of transference. So, the content of this entire teachings can be said to be layered in this way. Patrul Rinpoche followed the teachings of his guru and the treatises of the lineage masters. Along with his own wisdom, he left us the book, The Words of My Perfect Teacher, which is like a wish-fulfilling jewel for later generations. The general content can be summarized like this. If we understand this content, we can say that we're truly qualified Buddhists. In Tibetan Buddhism, everyone believes that as long as one studies the Dharma, it's required that everyone first studies the Dzogchen Preliminary Guide. This tradition and this viewpoint is also common now in many cities in mainland China. I think this is very good. And I hope that all Dharma friends here who have connected to the Supreme Dharma this time will pass this on to others in the future. Everyone should truly understand the basic content of Buddhism. If we thoroughly master the Dzogchen Preliminary Guide, we can be considered as people who understand the basic principles of Buddhism. Otherwise, many people today appear to have taken refuge in Buddhism or even been studying Vajrayana, and some even claim to have attained realization, supernatural powers, and miraculous abilities. But in fact, they don't even understand some basic principles. This is really quite unfortunate, and if we're honest, it's a bit embarrassing. Therefore, we shouldn't deceive ourselves or others. And above all, please never use Buddhism as a tool for deception. Especially nowadays, there are so many methods of deception in the world. So I believe that since we have obtained this rare human life and taken refuge in Buddhism in this life, following the teachings of a spiritual teacher, We should be people of integrity, studying and practicing according to the Dharma. This point is crucial. If ordinary people rely only on their own wisdom, then not to mention profound Buddhist teachings, even some worldly knowledge, without a teacher, we can't understand it. Therefore, it's essential that we follow these treatises that carry blessings, along with qualified masters, to guide us. Gradually, our mind will become workable. Eventually, once our afflictive emotions are tamed, we'll have the ability to benefit sentient beings. Next, we'll discuss the author's pledge. Clear and comprehensible, yet profoundly meaningful and extremely rare. The unerring oral transmission from the incomparable Guru. According to my mind's definitive understanding, I explain this. May the Gurus and deities bless my mind stream. This treatise, a guide to the preliminaries for the heart essence of the vast expanse from the Dzogchen, from a literary perspective, is very simple and easy to understand. There's nothing difficult to comprehend. It uses very simple language to explain the entire systematic approach to practice. So, generally in Tibet, even young monks who have just taken up Dharma can basically understand the content of the preliminary guide. The wise ones who have studied and contemplated for many years also find the content extremely profound. And yet, even they find certain parts of the text that they don't fully understand. So, the preliminary guide seems to be simple in words. But its content and meaning are extremely profound. Some geshes who have studied for many years, venerable masters and other wise ones, even they find certain passages difficult to fully penetrate. They feel that the more they contemplate its meaning, the deeper it becomes. That's why this is extremely rare, to have such teachings with the characteristics of the Vajra speech of noble ones. These teachings aren't something Patrul Rinpoche has made up on his own. They are based on the teachings transmitted from his gracious root lineage guru, Gyalwai Nyugu. Patrul Rinpoche recorded them word for word, without missing a single one. In the verses that follow, Patrul Rinpoche also says, I was originally very proficient in worldly poetry and rhetoric. I could also skillfully draw poetic patterns. In other words, he was very skilled in poetry. But these aren't the excellent oral teachings from my great root guru. Therefore, I didn't mix in my own conceptual thoughts here. But I wrote down the guru's instructions exactly as they were. Patrul Rinpoche had received the instructions from his guru again and again, 25 times in all. Some people nowadays may not be willing to listen to the words of my perfect teacher 25 times. Some have already listened to it 3 or 4 times and think, I already understand the content. Why do I still have to study it again? Today we're discussing it and next year we'll talk about it again. It's not necessary, isn't it? Some people might think this way. In fact, maybe they can understand the words, but they haven't truly mastered the content yet. Back in 2002, when I was at the Xiamen Minnan Buddhist Academy, I met a professor from Xiamen University. In an occasional chance, we discussed about many aspects of the Dharma and some worldly issues, including the differences between modern explorations in physics, quantum mechanics, and Buddhism. We talked for a long time. At that time, I had just finished translating the extensive biography of Shakyamuni Buddha. When we talked about Buddhism, he said, I'm currently reading the preliminaries of Dzogchen. I remember that a master as wise as Patrul Rinpoche needed to receive this teaching 25 times. For someone as ordinary as me, I have only read it 5 or 6 times, but that's definitely not enough. I vow to read it every year. It's been so many years since I met him. If only I could contact him and ask whether he still reads it every year. Indeed, some wise people, university professors, who are accustomed to rigorous intellectual scrutiny, might be expected to be skeptical, and yet even they find that the more they read this text, the more depth they discover, the more sense it makes. Wise people are like this. Those without wisdom might read it once and then discard the Dharma book, and perhaps never read it again. It happens. Therefore, we should continuously study the Dharma without ever feeling satisfied. The noble masters of the past were never satisfied with just receiving one teaching. They never said, that's enough. However, nowadays, some people think differently. Recently, some people claimed, I've already studied the Bodhisattva's way of life. And I've studied a letter to my friend, so that's enough. Do I need to study the preliminary guide now? Have I studied too much? Well, there's really no need to worry about that. I once read Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's biography. During his lifetime, he listened to teachings on over 700 volumes of Dharma text in his short life. I was amazed that it was really over 700 volumes. For many of us here, 700 volumes sounds unimaginable. But let's be honest, have we even studied 70 or even 7? Have we properly received the transmission of even 7 texts? Some people nowadays feel quite satisfied with themselves after studying just the Bodhisattva's way of life or just finished studying 1 or 2 treatises. When studying the Dharma, we should have an insatiable appetite, a strong desire and longing for the Dharma. We shouldn't give up so easily. On the contrary, for various worldly pleasures, we should have the attitude, I now have 1 house. That's enough. What's the point of building another big house in this short life? It's good to have less and less for worldly things and an ever-increasing desire for the Dharma. Reading one teaching is definitely not enough. I need to read another one. Receiving the transmission of this Dharma practice once isn't enough. I need to receive it again. I've completed a single round of 500,000 preliminaries practices once. That's not enough. I'll do it twice. If twice isn't enough, I'll do it 3 times. If 3 times isn't enough, 4 times. I have seen how the masters of the past approached the 500,000 preliminaries. There was once a venerable master. When he was teaching the Dharma, he said, the 500,000 accumulations, that's the easy part. You can finish them in a matter of days. What is so remarkable about that? But the most fundamental training is the 4 common preliminaries. You really need to invest your time there. That's where the real work lies. He thought that the time spent on the 500,000 accumulation practices was relatively brief, but most of the time should be spent on the common preliminaries. Nowadays, many people think that making full-length prostrations 100,000 times is an enormous undertaking for them. This shows that our power of mind isn't strong enough. If we spend our time and energy on things driven by desire, anger, and ignorance, no matter how much we spend, we'll never be satisfied. So we need to understand this principle. Here, from the Peerless Teacher's instructions, Patrul Rinpoche developed conviction in his own mind. The meanings of the Dharma he obtained are extremely precious. Therefore, he faithfully recorded it in writing. Everything he received from his guru, all his experiences, perceptions, and key instructions, he wrote all of them down. As I mentioned before, one of the disciples of the Phuntsok Rinpoche was from Batang. He was a quiet, unassuming little monk. For about 10 years, he quietly recorded some of Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's words. The casual jokes, even the criticisms he made to some disciples, he wrote them all down. Last year, 3 years after Phuntsok Rinpoche passed away, he had the book printed. Once printed, everyone felt it was very rare and precious. Because when the Guru was alive, many things he said didn't seem significant. The Guru would say this every day, criticizing this or mentioning that. But after the Guru left this world, even the most ordinary words, when contemplated later on, in the process of reflection, we feel that these must contain profound secret meanings. There are many simple words in the book which couldn't have been said by ordinary people. As time goes on, we feel that more and more. Similarly, Patrul Rinpoche, on the one hand, included the general teachings of his guru, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu. On the other hand, he also quoted many teachings from eminent monks and masters in both India and Tibet. He directly wrote them down, and during the writing process, he also supplicated to his root guru and lineage masters, as well as the Yidam, Dakinis, and Dharma protectors, to bless his mind stream. May this Dharma text in the future be passed down for generations and benefit countless sentient beings. As I mentioned 2 days ago, the blessings of the words of my perfect teacher in today's world are truly inconceivable. It's precisely because of his supplications and aspirations at that time. Many people, after reading it, immediately experience a transformation in their mind stream within a short time. It was originally in very simple language. But for many people, this one sentence has brought about significant change in their lives. Many of our Dharma friends in the audience have also relied on this Dharma text. It can be said that all the major issues in this life and even in future lives have been dealt with. We can say that in their mind stream they have accumulated some undefiled wealth of the true noble ones. This is also due to the blessings of the lineage masters. I always believe that in the process of studying the Dharma, it's truly important to supplicate the lineage gurus. When the blessings of the gurus are assimilated into our mind stream, no matter what aspect of Dharma we practice, whether it's study, contemplation, or meditation, everything would become easier. But if the guru's wisdom hasn't dissolved into our minds, then many things would be difficult. We should understand this. At the same time, we also supplicate all the lineage masters mentioned above, that their great compassion, wisdom, and various extraordinary abilities to benefit sentient beings all dissolve into our ordinary conceptual minds, so that we can become like these lineage masters, and in the future we can display special powers in benefiting sentient beings. This is the only thing we ask for. We don't ask the gurus to bless us, to live longer in this world. We don't ask the gurus' blessings so that when we're old, we can get our full pension without any deductions. Nowadays, people aspire for all sorts of blessings in various monasteries, but these worldly concerns aren't what we seek. We only seek to benefit sentient beings, even if we're broken to pieces or live a short life. No matter what happens, these worldly concerns aren't important. We have been wandering in samsara for countless times. It has happened before, and it will happen again. So these aren't important, but we should have a heart for benefiting sentient beings, a powerful or courageous mind that persists in all future lives. This is the bodhisattva, the warrior's vow. We must have this kind of blessing. We should think this way. These are the few verses we discuss at the beginning of the preliminary guide. I also want to mention, since everyone has recently been practicing the common preliminaries of the Dzogchen, I should explain these practices a bit more. Before each practice, everyone should understand that this liturgy isn't only for the common preliminaries, but should also be included in the uncommon inner preliminaries. So, as a side note, I'll briefly explain practice instructions to everyone. This content is primarily based on the teachings of Patrul Rinpoche and Khenpo Ngakchung. I myself have also tried to practice in this way in the past. I think some people seem to feel that they can't practice this way. How exactly to practice it then? Let me explain so everyone can understand. Once you understand, I hope in this lifetime you'll consistently practice according to this guideline. Now, I want to clarify something. There's nothing wrong with physical exercise or yoga for health. But what I'm saying here, from a Dharma perspective, is that our practice should go beyond just the physical body. Some practitioners invest all their energy in physical techniques borrowed from other traditions, and they end up neglecting the inner transformation that Dharma practice offers. That would be a missed opportunity. Some people even learn martial arts. Those movements are vastly different from the teachings we practice here. I practice accordingly after following my guru. Whenever I can remember, I do so. I hope many Dharma friends will also continue practicing this way in the long term. When we talk about practice, especially during retreat, we remain in meditation or enter formal meditation. At that time, we must understand several key practices. These practices can be condensed into a one-day practice. That's to say, if a person is in retreat, how should that person practice from morning to night? How to practice throughout one day? This is what the teaching is about. Of course, depending on your time of the day, you can practice for 1 session, 2 sessions, or 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions. Any of these approaches is acceptable. According to different gurus' teachings, if your schedule is very tight, as it might be for some city dwellers, due to work and other reasons, you may not be able to practice 6 sessions. However, practicing just in the morning or evening, continually practicing 1 session is also fine. For instance, a classmate of mine holds a significant position in a government department and has no time during the day. Yet, for 6 or 7 years now, she has consistently maintained her practice of 1 session every night without fail. So it really comes down to a person's faith. If you have faith, you can find time and create the environment for practice. Even if you're in prison, you can still practice. Many great masters were also imprisoned in the past, and they continuously practiced, eventually attaining the rainbow body. So, how much more so for us? Some might say, I don't have freedom and space, my family doesn't support me, but I think their circumstances are definitely better than being in prison. Compared to being in prison, where the warden and others may not support your practice at all, your family situation is far more supportive. People in difficult situations can still find opportunities to practice. So I think it's probably a bit easier for us in comparison. If you're really busy during the daytime, one session of practice should be manageable in the morning or evening. Even for volunteers and staff members at the Academy, I strongly hope that everyone completes at least one session of the common preliminaries. One session is the minimum requirement. The minimum time for each session is at least half an hour. If you can't manage this, then perhaps you have fallen into what we call a state without leisure, meaning your life circumstances have become such that you simply have no opportunity to practice. That's what the teachings warn us about. Now I'll briefly explain a day's practice. In the Heart Essence lineage tradition, all the senior practitioners place great importance on formal meditation. This is taken very seriously. Generally, it's divided into morning practice and the main practice throughout the day, and evening practice before sleep. These are divided into three aspects. Upon waking from a dream in the morning, you should visualize this way. All the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and my lineage gurus, through the sound of the Vajra bell and hand drum, have awakened me from the sleep of ignorance and afflictive emotions. Keep this thought in your heart, and immediately upon waking, some practitioners recite Lama Kien or verses, aspiring for gurus to turn their minds toward them. Alternatively, as I mentioned before, you can start by reciting the 100-syllable mantra 21 times. Then rest your mind quietly on your bed for a while. Reflect on what kind of dream you had last night, whether it was bad or good. If it was a disturbing dream, use it as a prompt for self-reflection. In this tradition, practitioners take it as a sign to renew their diligence. If it was a good dream, rejoice and dedicate the merit. After reciting the 100-syllable mantra, you can get up and make at least 3 prostrations. Following your prostrations, proceed with your morning routine. Wash your face, brush your teeth, go to the toilet, fetch water, and attend to other necessary tasks. This is how it should be done. Once these tasks are completed, start cleaning the shrine room and make offerings of water and incense. After completing all of this in front of the Buddha statue, the morning practice is finished. Then the formal practice begins. I think the actual practice is divided into 3 parts: preliminaries, main practice, and the concluding session. The first part consists of the preliminaries. Once you have finished all preparations, including setting the boundary by closing the door, there's no need for you to get up or do anything else in the middle, as you've already prepared beforehand. After that, take your meditation posture right away. For instance, you take seated meditation in the morning and again in the afternoon. When you start your morning seated meditation session, as mentioned, it should be divided into preliminaries, main practice, and concluding session. The preliminaries consist of 3 key points, according to Khenpo Ngakchung's instructions, called the A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher. It discussed this aspect of the practice, starting from page 143, if I recall correctly. During practice, the preliminaries must encompass 3 key points. The first key point is the posture of the body. We often discuss the 7-point sitting posture of Vairochana in our practice, so it should be well known to everyone. The first point is to cross legs in full Vajra lotus posture or half lotus position. Everyone should be able to be seated in the Vajra posture. This sitting posture is very important. The second point is to position hands in meditation mudra. When making the mudra, place the right hand on top of the left, with both thumbs touching, and rest the hands below the navel. This forms the mudra. The third point is to keep the spine straight and upright. The spine shouldn't be bent or leaning backward. It must be kept straight. Some traditional key instructions mention that when the body is straight, the channels are straight. When the channels are straight, the mind is straight. When the mind is straight, awareness, or the objects you're visualizing can manifest. So, the spine must be straight. The fourth point involves the neck, which should be slightly leaning forward. The neck shouldn't lean backward or tilt to either side, but instead, it should be slightly bent forward. This is the fourth point. The fifth point involves the shoulders. They should be relaxed or slightly rolled back, not compressing the chest or drawn inwards, as such a posture is unsuitable. This is the fifth point. The sixth point is to keep eyes focused on the tip of the nose. The eyes shouldn't be too wide open, but rather looking at the tip of the nose. The seventh point is that the tip of the tongue should touch the upper palate. Together, these form the 7-point posture of Vairochana. As I mentioned earlier, before you start meditation, first find a comfortable cushion and practice the 7-point posture of Vairochana. Allow your mind to completely settle down and sit quietly for a while. These are the essential points concerning the body's posture. Next is the speech or the verbal aspect. Generally, it refers to reciting mantras, etc. However, in this context, it's specifically related to breathing. What we usually discuss here is what we call the 9 breathings of purification. So at this time, generally the right hand forms the Vajra fist. The thumb is tucked inside, and the other fingers are wrapping the thumb on the outside, holding the fist in this way. Then the right hand presses at the top of your right thigh. There's an artery at the top of the thigh that often pulses. Keep pressing the top of the thigh. Then the left hand forms the 3-pronged Vajra mudra. Extend the index finger while the other fingers form a fist. Then press on the left nostril and exhale 3 times through the right nostril, while exhaling 3 times. Visualize in your mind that since beginningless time, all the negative karma created by yourself and all sentient beings, especially the karma created by anger, is expelled out in the form of white smoke. This is the exhaling of 3 breaths from the right side. Then the left hand forms the Vajra fist and also presses at the top of the left thigh. The right hand presses the right nostril and exhale 3 breaths through the left nostril. At that time, visualize in your mind that since beginningless time, all the negative karma created by yourself and all sentient beings, especially the karma created by desire, is expelled out in the form of red smoke. It's completely expelled. Exhale 3 breaths in this manner. After that, form Vajra fists with both hands and press at the top of both thighs. Exhale 3 breaths simultaneously through both nostrils. While exhaling 3 breaths, visualize in your mind that since beginningless time, all the negative karma created by yourself and all sentient beings, especially the karma created by ignorance, is expelled in the form of black smoke. This is called the 9 breathings of purification. After this, some guide texts suggest reciting Omahum. If you can recite the Tibetan vowel and consonant mantra and the interdependent origination mantra, that's the best. If you can't, just recite Omahum several times. This is because when the 3 Vajras of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dissolve into your mind, your speech will be blessed. This type of breathing purification may appear to be an ordinary yoga practice at first, but it serves a profound purpose. All the afflictive emotions, desire, anger, and ignorance within our mind stream are expelled through this practice. It's like when you're about to eat, you clean your bowl thoroughly in advance. Or when you're about to pour water, you clean the bucket thoroughly to ensure the water is clean enough to be used. Therefore, before beginning your visualization practice, you expel desire, anger, and ignorance from your mind stream through the 9 breathings of purification. This is absolutely essential. This is the key point of speech. This is how it should be practiced. Then we discuss the key point of the mind, which can be divided into 2 aspects. One is the right attitude, which has already been mentioned before. You should think in your mind, what is my attitude for practicing the common preliminaries this time? You can examine your mind. If your attitude is neutral, then turn it into something virtuous. If your attitude is negative, completely abandon it and don't give rise to such attitude. If it's a virtuous attitude, there are mundane and transmundane, two types. Mundane virtuous attitude can also be of two kinds. One attitude is called being relieved from fear. What kind of fear? For example, we're afraid of enemies, afraid of illness, afraid of falling into lower realms, great numbers of fear. We begin to practice in order to be relieved from fear. Some people think, I'm seriously ill, so I practice to be rescued from this illness. This is the attitude of being relieved from fear. Another attitude is having hope for good results, wishing for wealth, health, beauty, wishing for success in work, or for future blessings to be reborn in the human or God realms. Practicing with the hope of attaining wonderful worldly achievements in this life or the next is called practicing with the hope for good results. However, this approach is actually improper and should be abandoned. Among mundane virtuous attitude, these two kinds of attitudes should be forsaken. In the transmundane attitude, there is an attitude similar to that of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, who seeks individual liberation from beginningless samsara. But this kind of attitude should also be forsaken. Then there's the great being's attitude, as we mentioned before, for the benefit of all sentient beings as vast as the sky, wishing for them to attain the fully perfected state of enlightenment. This is called bodhicitta, which is the right attitude that must be generated before practice. This is the first aspect of the mind's key point, attitude. Abandon mundane and negative attitudes, genuinely develop bodhicitta. This is the aspect on attitude. The second aspect of the mind's key point is supplication. When supplicating, visualize in the space in front of you, about a foot above. On a 1,000-petaled lotus and lion throne, visualize your own guru. When visualizing, if you have great faith in your guru, you can visualize the guru's form exactly as they're now, whether monastic or lay people, just as they appear. Just as how guru visualization is conducted in Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's Guru Yoga. Alternatively, you can visualize the guru as Avalokiteshvara, Shakyamuni Buddha, Padmasambhava, or other forms. Then in front of the guru, place your entire trust in the guru and supplicate. This is extremely important. Generally speaking, after generating bodhicitta, we practice guru yoga. At this time, thinking, the embodiment of all the aggregate wisdom of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas from all the worlds of the 10 directions. My root guru, wish-fulfilling jewel, please think of me and bless me. Let my mind really assimilate the teachings properly. Allow me to succeed in practicing the Dharma. Eliminate all my deluded and conceptual thoughts and attain supreme realization. If you're practicing on the precious human rebirth, think, may the realization of its preciousness arise in my mind stream, just like it has in yours, Guru. If you're practicing the impermanence of life, may all the wisdom related to impermanence arise in my mind stream, just like it has in yours, Guru. Very quickly, right in this session, right now at this moment, I supplicate that it arises in my mind stream in a powerful way. With utmost reverence, continue to supplicate in this way. During the supplication process, we usually should recite the Guru recitation. Now we should recite the recitation when prostrating. Generally recite it 21 times or 100 times, supplicating continuously in this way. With great faith, join your palms. Visualize the Guru in front of you, reciting in their presence continuously. After supplicating, the Guru dissolves into light and the light merges into your body. The Guru's wisdom and your own mind becoming inseparable as one, abiding in this state. Don't follow your past conceptual thoughts. Don't cling to your present mind. And don't anticipate future conceptual projections. Don't cling to anything. Just reside in this state. This is the preliminary practice of the mind's key points. Everyone should remember the key points of body, speech, and mind. Many people are currently practicing prostrations. If prostrations are your main session, Guru Yoga, though originally a preliminary practice, can serve as the main practice while you continuously prostrate. Visualize the Guru in front of you and prostrate continuously before him. When you make a dedication of merit at the end, dedicate it as usual. If you haven't practiced Guru Yoga as the main practice, when you practice the common preliminaries, Guru Yoga should have been completed by then. After completion, you can proceed to the main practice. What constitutes the main practice? It's akin to what was taught yesterday about the 8 states without freedoms. It begins with the contemplation. Among the 8 states without freedom, how truly fortunate I'm in this life. Appreciating not being born in the hell realms or hungry ghost realms. Start your practice with this gratitude. Today we'll discuss the 10 advantages. Reflect on each one, thinking, truly I'm fortunate to have obtained a human body, and so on. Keep practicing in this manner. This is the main practice itself, continuing all the way until bodhicitta is fully developed. Practice entirely in this manner. This is Khenpo Ngakchung's key instruction. In Nepal, there's a person named Sangye Dorje. He's over 80 years old and is a disciple of Khenpo Ngakchung. In some of his writings, he mentions that from the preciousness of human life to the practice of bodhicitta, 146 days of practice are required. Among other things, combined with the explanatory text from Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, most people need at least 100 days to complete the common 4 preliminaries. This is the tradition of many gurus. So for me, this isn't something I just thought of today. Throughout my life, I've always valued the practice of finding rest in the nature of the mind and the words of my perfect teacher. Of course, some people have benefited from it, while others haven't benefited much. There are also some people who haven't paid special attention to it. But regardless, 10 years ago, when I taught you all the guidebook on the 3 key points and the words of my perfect teacher, it was the same back then, and it's the same now. I hope that throughout our lives we should avoid jumping from one practice to another, or wanting to try so many things, or following multiple different teachers without direction. It can be difficult. You might even encounter teachers from non-Buddhist traditions, what are called tirthikas in classical Buddhist texts, and begin practicing their methods. From a Buddhist perspective, the concern here isn't that other traditions are worthless, but that scattering your efforts across many systems can prevent you from going deep in any one path. If we try to learn all the different schools in the world, we'll never finish. So, I hope we can always maintain our foundation practice from morning to night, always practice in this way. This is what I do, but for you, some may listen to me, some may not. Anyhow, I hope in the future you'll consistently engage in the main practice, as we just discussed. After completing the main practice, for example, if you're practicing the guide text on the preciousness of human life, you've practiced for an hour, 2 hours, or half an hour. You should then conclude with the dedication. During dedication, think that, just as the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dedicate merit, so likewise I too dedicate all merit. Dedicate while resting in the state without any conceptualization. We've already discussed these methods of dedication. Then you recite, if you have time, recite the aspiration of Samantabhadra. If you don't have time, then dedicate the merit with verses like the courageous wisdom of Manjushri, etc. This is called the concluding session. The preliminary, the main practice, and the conclusion, the structure is like this. The third point I mentioned earlier is before you sleep at night, after completing a day's practice. Whether it's 6 sessions or 4 sessions, once you finish everything, put away all the offerings to the Dharma protectors and many other offering items. Before going to sleep, prostrate 3 times. After prostrating, lie down in your bed and reflect carefully. How was my practice today? If you did well, then rejoice and dedicate it to sentient beings. If you didn't do well, then take it to heart and reflect honestly. You should think, I've received so many instructions from my guru. Others practice successfully every day. Why am I falling so far behind? I really must do better. Khenpo Ngakchung taught a practice of strong self-accountability. In this tradition, when you have been lazy or careless in practice, you don't let yourself off the hook easily. You reflect honestly and even use physical reminders, like pinching yourself, to snap out of complacency. This isn't about self-punishment in a harmful sense. It's a traditional method for generating the urgency and diligence needed for genuine spiritual progress. Then prostrate 3 times, as I mentioned earlier, and go to sleep. Of course, some practitioners generally avoid lying down at night. For those who do sleep, as mentioned before, sleep in the lion's posture. At this time, according to the teachings of some gurus in the heart essence lineage tradition, visualize the guru dissolving into light and merging into the 4-petaled lotus at your heart. The guru radiates light, and you fall asleep bathed in these infinite rays of light. Alternatively, the guru radiates light, and the entire outer and inner world may merge into yourself. and then you into the Guru. Finally, the Guru also dissolves into light and disappears into the entire Dharmadhatu. Then in the state beyond any concept, enter the luminous dream. If you haven't practiced the luminous dream before, just rest in the state of non-clinging. Actually, many senior gurus and experienced practitioners, when they wake up in the morning, they start by reciting the 100-syllable mantra or supplicating the Guru. Their entire day, in all their activities, whether walking, sitting, or lying down, is spent supplicating the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the Guru. In this kind of state, at night when they sleep, they continuously recite Lama Kien, gradually falling asleep in such a way that the Guru's wisdom and their own thoughts are inseparable in a state of non-duality and fall asleep. Many senior practitioners are like this, but nowadays, many practitioners are probably not like this. When they wake up in the morning, their behavior is far from mindful. During the daytime, they're constantly distracted. At night when they sleep, it's like just collapsing onto the bed like a log without any mindfulness at all. Every day just muddles by in a haze one after another. Then life passes by in just a few decades. This really isn't the right way to live. A true practitioner should maintain consistent practice every day, as if each day's practice were performed in the same manner. We sincerely hope that if we supplicate the Guru and 3 jewels, we should gain some benefit. The omniscient Longchen Rabjam also said, if we don't actually practice, then even if we can recite or are proficient in thousands of sutras and commentaries, it will be of no use when the time of our death approaches. Therefore, we must practice the Dharma earnestly with devotion. We should study and practice simultaneously. All right, let's stop here.
Bandara Banma Sadar